Hello, my name is Trina Ganguly, and the date today is September 29th, 2022. Today I'll be discussing the anatomy and physiology of the retina. To begin with, I want to get into the gross anatomy of the eye a little bit. First, there is the pupil, which allows light to enter the eye. It appears dark because of the absorbing pigments in the retina. The iris, which is the pigmented area of the eye or the colored section, such as brown, green, blue, hazel. It controls the size of the pupil so that more or less light, depending on the conditions, is allowed to enter the eye. The cornea is a transparent avascular tissue that acts as a structural barrier and protects the eye against infections. The sclera is the white layer of the eye that covers most of the outside of the eyeball, which is also known as the white parts of the eye. That's the sclera. The lens is a nearly transparent biconvex structure suspended behind the iris of the eye, for which the sole function is to focus light rays onto the retina. The ciliary muscle changes the shape of the lens when your eyes focus on a near subject. The conjunctiva provides protection and lubrication to the eye by producing mucus and tears. The retina, which is the star of today's presentation, is a layer of photoreceptor cells and glial cells within the eye that captures incoming photons and transmits them along neuronal pathways as both electrical and chemical signals for the brain to perceive a visual picture. The optic nerve carries messages from the retina to the brain. The macula is the part of your eye that processes what you see directly in front of you, which is also known as your central vision area. The retinal blood vessels provide blood to the inner retinal neurons, and the vitreous body is a clear, colorless fluid that fills the space between the lens and the retina of your eye. Now we will be getting a little deeper into the retina. The retina is the innermost layer of the eye. It consists of photoreceptor cells that convert light energy into nerve impulses. These electrical signals are passed via the optic nerve to the visual cortex, allowing us to visualize our surroundings. Specifically, the retina captures the light that enters your eye and helps translate it into the images you see. Light passes through the lens at the front of your eye and hits the retina. Photoreceptors, which are cells inside your retina that react to light and change light energy into an electrical signal. This signal travels through your optic nerve and into your brain to become the picture of the world you see. And for the eye, the retina acts kind of like a translator, translating the information that you're getting through the retina into signals that your brain can understand. And so when the light hits the retina, your retina converts it to a signal, and your brain then processes and understands it in the way that the brain will understand. And so, as a result, without a retina or with a damaged retina, your eye might still function in the sense that it will still take in light, but your brain wouldn't receive all the information that it needs to create the images that you're seeing in the world. So here we'll be getting into the anatomy of the retina. The retina is made up of hundreds and millions of neurons, many of which are photoreceptors that detect and respond to light. There are two types of photoreceptors, rods and cones. Rods allow us to detect motion and see in dim lighting conditions. They are located throughout the retina and concentrated along the periphery of the retina. Cones allow us to see color and detail. They are concentrated more in the macula, which is a small area in the central part of the retina. And in the center of the macula is the fovea, which contains tightly packed cones, but no rods. When light enters the eye, the cornea and lens help to focus it on the retina, which then converts the light into electrical impulses. The impulses travel to the brain through the optic nerve, which is a bundle of over 1 million nerve fibers. And the brain then turns these impulses into images. Furthermore, the retina is derived from the neural tube and is therefore part of the central nervous system. It consists of two parts, the retinal pigment epithelium, which separates the middle choroid coat of the eyeball from the other innermost component, and the neural retina, which is the dark pigments within the retinal pigment epithelium and choroid coat. It functions to absorb light passing through the receptor layer, thus reducing light scatter and image distortion within the eye. And to add on, the neural retina contains 5 types of neurons: the visual receptor cells, which are the rods and cones, the horizontal cells, the bipolar cells, the amacrine cells, and the retinal ganglion cells. And the retinal artery supplies blood to the retina, and the blood then flows through the retinal arterioles, capillaries, and finally through branch retinal veins that drain into the central retinal vein. Here we'll be going a little deeper into the retina, and we'll be looking at the layers of the retina. So histologically, the retina can be divided into 10 primary layers, which are the inner limiting membrane, the nerve fiber layer, the ganglion layer, the inner plexiform layer, the inner nuclear layer, the outer plexiform layer, the outer nuclear layer, the outer limiting membrane, the photoreceptor layer, and the retinal pigmented epithelium layer, monolayer. And so to begin with, the first layer, the inner limiting membrane, is formed by the conical entity of the Mueller cells and astrocytes. The second layer, the nerve fiber layer, consists of axons, ganglion cells, retinal vessels, and glial cells. The third layer, the ganglion cell layer, predominantly contains the nucleus of ganglion cells, vessel cells, glial cells, and some displaced amacrine cells. The fourth layer is the inner plexiform layer, where bipolar amacrine and ganglion cells interact. The fifth layer, the inner nuclear layer, harbors the nuclei from bipolar, horizontal, amacrine, and Mueller cells. The sixth layer is the outer plexiform layer, where photoreceptor cells connect with bipolar cells, where horizontal cells interact closely with both photoreceptors and bipolar cells. The seventh layer, the outer nuclear layer, contains nuclei from photoreceptor cells. The eighth layer, the outer limiting membrane, is created by junctional complexes between adjacent Mueller cells as well as between Mueller and photoreceptor cells. The ninth layer, the photoreceptor layer, contains tightly stacked cones and rods, forming a palisading layer of photoreceptors. And the 10th layer results from tight junctional complexes between the retinal pigmented epithelium monolayer cells, forming a continuous retinal pigmented epithelium monolayer. And there's also the choroid at the end, which is a highly vascularized layer that supplies nutrients and oxygen to the retina. And so now we will get into the neural function of the retina. And so in this figure, it presents the essentials of the retina's neural connections, showing at the left the circuit in the peripheral retina, and at the right the circuit in the foveal retina. The different neuronal cell types are the photoreceptors, which are the rods and cones. They transmit signals to the outer plexiform layer, where they synapse with bipolar cells and horizontal cells. The horizontal cells transmit signals horizontally in the outer plexiform layer from the rods and cones to bipolar cells. Then the bipolar cells transmit signals vertically from the rods, cones, and horizontal cells to the inner plexiform layer, where they then synapse with ganglion cells and amacrine cells. And then next, the amacrine cells transmit signals in two directions, either directly from the bipolar cells to the ganglion cells, or horizontally within the inner plexiform layer from axons of the bipolar cells to dendrites of the ganglion cells, or to the other amacrine cells. And then lastly, the ganglion cells transmit output signals from the retina through the optic nerve into the brain. And also a sixth type of neuronal cell in the retina, which is not very prominent and not shown in this figure, is the inner plexiform cell. This cell transmits signals in the retrograde direction from the inner plexiform layer to the outer plexiform layer. These signals are inhibitory and are believed to also control the lateral spread of visual signals by the horizontal cells in the outer plexiform layer. And these are my sources. Thank you.